What's going on, guys? This is my post-ride wrap-up of my experience with the 2026 Honda CBR 1000RR. I will post a link in the description below to the ride-along video. That way you can see my reaction to this machine in real time. Now, I have done a ride review of a 2025 CBR 1000RR, in essence the same exact bike, but I didn't look at it from the perspective that I did for this ride and review, which is from the point of view of somebody that owns a GSXR 750. Would the Honda CBR 1000RR be a good step up for guys that have middleweight sport bikes already? You're looking to make that jump up into the leader bike power class, and for a lot of middleweight guys, motorcycles like the GSXR 1000 and the R1, the ZX10, those are motorcycles that can be a little bit intimidating. Then you get outside of that with some Aprilias and the BMWs, and those bikes get really pricey. The Honda CBR 1000RR offers up a unique point of view on leader bikes. So, what's unique about it? Well, for starters, it's small. The wheelbase on a CBR 1000RR is the same as what you would find on a Kawasaki 636. It's really not much different than a GSXR 750, and when it comes to weight, the overall proportions of the bike are small. It doesn't weigh all that much either. It only weighs 432 pounds for the non-ABS variant, which is the bike that I rode. And so because of that, it really is more or less a 9/10 feeling leader bike. It's smaller dimensionally, and although it's not at the top of the food chain when it puts down power, it's still pretty impressive with the 25 and up motorcycles around 192 horsepower. It's nothing really to sneeze at. But Hondas in general never really were known for being the most powerful. They were typically known for being the most streetable. Now, look up any dyno chart of a CBR 1000 and its contemporaries, and although it may not be at the top of the charts, typically it's at the bottom, it would always seem to make the most power through the mid-range and under the curve. So, did the double R for 2026 carry on that mantra? Well, yes and no. So let's talk about that motorcycle and talk about some things that are really good and some things that were a little bit off-putting about it. First of all, what's good? The ergonomics. Love how that bike feels. Of all the leader bikes that I've had a chance to either ride or throw a leg over, the Honda CBR 1000RR is by far the most comfortable. It feels like a middleweight. The clip-ons feel like they're just a little bit higher. The foot pegs feel like they're just a little bit lower. The rider triangle is spread up a little bit, and it gives the bike a bit more of a comfortable feel and a less overall committed feel, at least when it comes to 1000cc super bikes. So in that respect, it's definitely a win. The smaller size and the lighter weight makes the bike feel very small underneath. It feels very placeable. And even though it's still using a 190/50 rear tire, which is known for making the bike feel a little bit slow to tip in, I never got that impression with this bike. So it carries itself extremely well, and it's comfortable at that. So ergonomics are amazing, as are the fit and finish of all the components. You kind of expect that with Honda, but the CBR 1000RR is absolutely beautifully put together. The switch placement, everything is extremely well thought out, and the materials definitely look premium. So what's not to love? It's a 1000cc leader bike, with a suspension that is very well set up for the street, nowhere near as harsh as, say, a GSXR 1000, and it's also a bit more controlled feeling than a GSXR 1000R model as it would come stock. It's a great place to be and a phenomenal bike, but there are some oddities here, and unfortunately the Honda CBR 1000RR is not immune from this affliction. The R1 from 2019 that I rode was a little bit like what I am going to describe now. So it's the throttle mapping. One of the issues with these modern Euro 5 motorcycles and all of their rider aids is that they tend to be a little bit aggressive with their discipline of the rider. Yeah, a perfect example of this is as you are rolling into the throttle with the CBR 1000RR, It is incredibly smooth with how the bike puts down power, with the only caveat to that being that it just doesn't react the same way that a GSXR 1000 would, or a GSXR 750, or a GSXR 600 would. It's very neutered in that initial throttle pull. It's not to say that it is weak though. It's just, if you're looking at the class of bikes that we're talking about, these are high performance machines, and having a neutered throttle input can definitely be off-putting, especially for experienced riders. But for somebody just getting into leader bikes, that's a really good thing, because even in its highest power setting, with all the nannies put at their lowest intervention modes, the bike still would try to keep a whole lot of things in check that an inexperienced rider, or at least a rider that doesn't have a lot of, say, track experience or a lot of fast back road experience, on the side of the tire, accelerating through corners, things of that nature. There's a lot going for the Honda to keep that rider's enthusiasm from getting them into trouble. So great for the beginner leader bike guy that doesn't really have a lot of experience, in controlled environments at speed, but maybe a little bit off-putting to the more experienced rider. Now, as the speed increases, the throttle mapping seems to change along with gears and velocity, to a point where in third gear, as I was pleasantly surprised by, this bike will get very aggressive, and then all that 192 horsepower starts to show its face. But it's one of those situations where all of the sensors had to basically agree by committee that it was okay to allow this level of power to hit the street. Wheel speed sensors and throttle position sensors and yaw position and everything else had to be just in line for this bike to allow for peak power as I was entering the freeway on an initial run up on the bike. It's a little bit surprising, but it also caught me a little bit off guard because, well, as I'm rolling in through first gear and second gear, trying to get the bike to move out of its own way, again, the nannies were there, but it was proactive, not reactive, in that there just wasn't the throttle mapping there in the first couple of gears. You get into third, you're expecting a certain amount of thrust per throttle, and now it allows all the power all at once. Exciting, but not predictable, and not really something that anybody of any skill set would be expecting straight away. It's just a quirk of the bike, and it's how a lot of these electronic throttle motorcycles work. And so I understand that you can probably get all of this tuned out and have all of this throttle mapping rectified through aftermarket tuning solutions. But again, if you're comparing this against a GSXR 750, which is as analog as it gets, they don't have that problem. It's you throw throttle at the bike and it does everything it can to haul ass. Same for the 600, and also same for the GSXR 1000. At least the older bikes leading up to, we don't know what's going to be happening in 2027. If you're watching this from the future, feel free to comment below. But the older GSXR 1000s in a 1 mode versus the Honda in 1111 or 1113 mode, the 3 or 1 at the very tail end is just engine braking. The lower the number, the more power, or the least intrusive. The GSXR 1000 will just allow you to basically run the bike however you're going to run it, and will only intervene in the most severe situations, where the Honda will intervene, well, you'll see it in the video, but it'll intervene a lot, and it intervenes in situations where you're trying to play with the bike a little bit, you're trying to apply more power, and you're expecting a certain amount of thrust, and it's not there. You get that, surging of power that can be, again, a little bit off-putting. I'm sure there's, or maybe there isn't a way to turn all of these features off. I didn't study into this bike that much, and of course I'm not on a closed course, so I can't really go out and try to extract the best out of this bike that I could. But for any rider that is coming into this bike that's considering it, because it is the smallest and because it is the most middleweight of all the rest of the bikes, just know that it does have a lot of nannyage that it's going to throw at you. But in saying all of that, is it necessarily a bad bike? Well, no, it's inherently a really good bike. And for some buyers of this motorcycle, it represents probably the most ideal 1000cc super bike that you could spend money on, because it does have all the nannies. And for riders that aren't as experienced as some that may not like those kinds of nannies, it'll keep you out of trouble, and it allows you to experience a leader bike in a much more comfortable and in a much more familiar setting, with it being a smaller bike, a little bit lower to the ground, easier to manage, and all of that. I will say this. I came into this comparison, I didn't really have any preconceived thoughts with this. I had already ridden the bike once. I knew what to expect with the nannies, but I wanted to dive into this bike a little bit more and see what I could get out of this bike once I kind of started to remove a lot of those nannies, or at least reduce them as much as possible. Because remember, I never did figure out if you could, or how you could, if you could, remove some of those nannies within that menu. And I came away from the experience with a new appreciation for the CBR 1000RR and for my GSXR 750. You know, it's kind of interesting for folks that would gravitate to the CBR 1000 because it does have all the nannies and it will take care of you. And I think in the video, I call it the little angels in the ECU. There's the other side to that coin with bikes like the GSXR 750 and GSXR 600 for that matter, that don't have any kind of rider aids. And it is 100% rider that is getting you through the bends, getting you down the street. And in that respect, you know, you got to look at it as, is it really a graduation up into a CBR 1000RR, or is the situation with all of those nannies like the CBR 1000RR has, that are incorporated into these other middleweights like the R9 and the RCR 990, these types of motorcycles that are so laden with technology that I don't really think that they need. You know, are we trying to actually over technologize, is that a word? We're just going to go with it, these newer sport bikes. Because when I was on the way home with my GSXR 750, keep in mind I rode my GSXR 750 to the dealership and I rode it back. I got to thinking about it. I thought, you know, it would be a phenomenal bike, the RR, if there's a way. And if there is a way, comment in the comments below. Let me know how you do it. If there's a way to be able to turn off some of the nannies, maybe leave a couple in place. It's a phenomenal bike. I love the chassis. I love the way that the bike feels. But for a lot of guys with more experience, they're going to gravitate more towards bikes like the GSXR 1000, the ZX10R, and to another extent, maybe the R1, assuming that you can start to turn off those traction control rider aids, and you can start to really extract everything that that bike can offer. So, love the bike. The technology would take a little bit of getting used to, but I think for the right person out there that wants the experience of a leader bike, but also wants the safety and security of the rider aids that are going to protect them and help them out in case of emergency, that CBR 1000RR is the exact right bike for you. But in saying all of that, gotta send a huge shout out to Hunter, Tommy, and the rest of the gang over at Stub Cycles for allowing me to bring this bike to you. Check out that ride-along video in the description below. Like, share, if you made it this far into this video, hit the subscribe button. It helps my channel out way more than you know. And I hope to catch you on the next one. Y'all, take it easy.